The Hangout is live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Weekly Pop Movie Podcast. This has been an exciting week of special episodes where I've been talking to guests from around the web, and I've got a special guest joining me today. It is Caleb Miles of Caleb Says Stuff on YouTube. What's up, Caleb?
Hey, man. How's it going?
Glad to have you on the show. I've been a fan of your stuff, I think, since you started. How long have you been YouTubing for?
Man, it's not even been a year yet. I actually had a podcast a couple of years ago with me and one of my friends, and it just got so hard trying to rely on somebody else that I kind of wanted to do it just on my own, you know?
I do, yeah. As a matter of fact, I've run into the same problem. The Weekly Pop used to be a 4-person panel, and then I also did movie trivia every week. But the second that you slack that one time, all of a sudden the momentum goes to shit. And that's kind of what happened with me.
Yeah.
So did you talk movies on the podcast?
Yeah, we talked about movies, just everything nerdy. It was actually a girl that was somebody I used to work with, and we just talked about everything nerdy. We talked about like our upcoming stuff, and it was always kind of interesting because we didn't agree on movies at all. We had totally opposite opinions on everything, which I always think makes it a little more interesting. But you know, it's so hard to just rely on someone else, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. And you kind of said something that speaks to my soul. Like, I don't want to go and watch a podcast or any sort of content where everybody's got the exact same opinion as me, or everybody's got the exact same opinion as each other. Because then we're not trying to like understand the other side of shit. We're just simply going to have our own beliefs reinforced or whatever, you know?
Yeah, it seems like everybody in everything, whether it's politically, it's movies, everything, we are all surround ourselves in these echo chambers. And especially with all the algorithms of everything, it ends up being that all we do is reinforce our own opinions on stuff. And I think that's why you get such like harsh reactions, even to movies. Like I got told I should die because I didn't like Thor Ragnarok, you know? And
Ragnarok, I remember that.
Yeah, that was actually my least favorite movie of the year, which is super controversial. That was my number one worst movie. And my thing is like, that's cool. Like I liked Batman vs Superman. A lot of people didn't. I didn't want the people who didn't like Batman vs Superman to die, you know. But I think it's because we all fall. Yeah, weird concept that we all I think just fall into our echo chambers. I'm kind of the same way. I'm like I like to disagree. It's fun.
Yeah. So when that kid told you, or adult, I don't fucking know, whenever who told you that you needed to die, did you respond to that?
No, actually, I started off pretty early when I said I wouldn't respond to negative comments. Like constructive criticism, yes, but like just negative stuff like that. Because I kind of feel like you teach people how to react to you. Yeah. And I would rather spend my time reacting to positive comments than negative ones.
I'm a petty bitch. I can't resist it. Like certain
you just go straight for
them. Oh yeah, to the throat too, man. And it's stupid. I mean, you've definitely got the right approach, because I do find that people respond to positive way better than they respond to negative. And thinking objectively about the similarities between you and I is like, I think we're honest. Like when I watch your reviews, that's what I appreciate about it. Because like you said, you weren't pro Thor Ragnarok. That's one of the best reviewed Marvel movies, you know?
Yeah.
And I personally really enjoyed it. But what I do find is, as far as surrounding yourself in these echo chambers, is like, if you love Thor Ragnarok, you're going to go watch Thor reviews for it. If you hate Thor Ragnarok, you may also watch reviews for it. But if you're like right in the middle, there's not really a place. Like you don't care to go and watch videos that are very in the middle about it. And I find that you should be somewhere in the middle on everything, you know?
Yeah, in fact, it's funny. The movies that I love or hate are always like, I'm sure the same with you. Your most viewed, and everything that I'm like, I liked, it gets very little views.
Absolutely, yeah. People don't care about that. I know one of my videos was a Dark Tower video, and I was just looking at it from like a film perspective. I'd never read all those books or any of that shit, and turns out Stephen King's got some pretty hardcore fans, because I got so much hate underneath that video.
I got it for It, because I didn't like It. Was another movie that I didn't like, another really well-reviewed movie that I didn't like. And yeah, no, the Stephen King fans came for me after that one too.
Man, they are for real. They remind me of Zack Snyder fans. And
they are very much. And it's so funny because I'm one of those people like I actually really enjoy Zack Snyder's work. I hate Zack Snyder fans.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
a little too like too attacking, you know?
yeah. I'm gonna isolate a lot of people when I say like I love Christopher Nolan's film. These Christopher Nolan fans are fucking. They're just. It's cool to be a casual fan of it, but when you're like, The Dark Knight's the greatest movie of all time, I really question your preferences.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and that's my thing is like there's a lot of movies that are like considered greats that I end up falling in that like 6 to 7 range on that, and people take that as me hating them. I remember I reviewed, I think Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I gave it a 6.5. I liked it, enjoyed it, but I didn't like it. I didn't love it, didn't hate it. And apparently everybody read that as, oh, I hated Guardians of the Galaxy.
Man, I sit
And I
so
was like, no, I liked it.
with you. It was like it was fine. It was the very definition of disposable entertainment. It was like it tried to just
Yeah,
go
it had moments.
far into it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And Kurt Russell, it's always great, man. You put Kurt Russell in anything, but
Yeah.
yeah, just I don't know. It didn't engage me like a lot of Marvel movies do. But before we get too deep into this, I did want to say we're going to talk a little bit about some of our favorites from 2017, maybe some of our biggest disappointments. You know, Caleb kind of let the cat out of the bag on that one. I'll give mine.
I know.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the stuff that we're looking forward to in 2018. I'm referring to my notes. And then we're going to talk about Ridley Scott and whether or not he's lost his fucking mind. So, man, that's going to be a good conversation. So let's talk a little bit about some of the movies that you did love in 2017. Like, it doesn't have to be your favorite, but what are a couple that really grabbed you this year?
Well, there was actually quite a few that really grabbed me this year. I really enjoyed War of the Planet of the Apes. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan. I felt like that did a lot of justice. I thought Matt Reeves took an interesting approach where he directed it more like a war drama, which I kind of appreciated. He treated it with way more respect than a movie about talking apes really deserved, and
Yeah.
I really appreciated it. Blade Runner was absolutely beautiful. That was probably some of the best cinematography I've ever seen. Dunkirk was another one that really resonated with me. Um, a movie that I'm not seeing get a ton of love that I absolutely loved. It has its problems, but from a screenplay and an acting setting is Thank You for Your Service. I really, really enjoyed Thank You for Your Service. I thought that kind of was the only movie that really actually kind of pulled up my heartstrings a little bit in this entire year.
What is it?
It's a movie about it's actually a true story about a group of guys who come home from Iraq and they do have PTSD, and about them just kind of working through it and kind of stuff that they go back to this small town, and after trying to just reintegrate into life and try to figure it all out. And it was actually a really powerful, smaller film. It's not amazingly directed or anything, but it definitely has some moments in it that are pretty amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like something that I would enjoy and that would be engaging. You know, of the movies that you listed, I haven't seen War. And for me to have not seen that movie, I don't know. Something must have been going on at that particular time that it was running, because Rise and Dawn they're like you said, they're way better than they have any business being. The original Planet of the Apes, you know, the Charlton Heston version, it's like a seminal sci-fi film. It was very influential and things like that. But I just really like the reverence that first it was Rupert Wyatt, I think, and then Matt Reeves took over. And I did like the sequel more, but the character of Caesar is just so badass. And I think this kind of ends his arc in a good way, right?
Yo, yeah, absolutely. And Caesar's always been a personal favorite. I actually used to have a bust up here of Caesar from the original trilogy. Well, not the original trilogy. I think he's in Planet of the Apes 5.
Yeah.
Is where Caesar comes in. And so I've always loved Caesar way more than Cornelius. So it was actually nice to see a franchise that concentrated on that character. And I think he's even honestly probably better in this one than like Roddy McDowall played Caesar, and I think he does him better, which is impressive because that's one of my favorite characters in cinema.
Let's see. So a couple that really jumped out to me. Wait, there was one other. I hadn't seen Dunkirk, and I hear really good things. Is it fair to say that it's a better technical exercise than it is a movie that you emotionally connect to?
I would say so. I said it was like Fury Road of this year, like where Fury Road kind of had a light plot, wasn't a lot of dialogue, but technically it was just so beautiful and so on point. That's kind of what Dunkirk was like. Fury Road set in reality. That's kind of how I and took it, and it ended up being just amazing to me.
That's a really cool way of putting it, and I can see where you come from. It's more of what people would consider a visceral kind of movie. It's
Yeah.
the experience than it is about the storytelling. I think it's great that you didn't like it, because I found a lot of enjoyment in that one. Again, of course, it had problems. I felt like the drama with the kids was so much more interesting than the clown stuff, because to me, the clown stuff it wasn't scary to me.
So that was a bunch of my problems with it in general. Is I actually, the parts with the kids were fine in it. There was that I got a little sick of the humor in it, but it wasn't bad. It worked. Skarsgård's portrayal of Pennywise I thought was horrible, and it was more the writing, not on a dialogue sense, but the actual plot. I kind of felt like I didn't know, as someone, I've read it when I was like a teenager, and I saw those movies when I was a teenager. I could tell you anything about it except for there's that weird like sex scene in the middle of the books that's very uncomfortable. And so I didn't like, after I left that movie, I still can't tell you why Pennywise was doing what he was doing, and I just kind of felt it was like this loop of jump scares that I actually, toward the end, and that shot where he kept running at the camera and shaking, that was very much like, they did it like 4 times. I was like, okay, I'm just over it. And once I started to see the pattern, I kind of fell out of it really quickly. The first like 30 minutes, I really liked it. And then after that, I kind of just lost interest.
I don't disagree with that at all. Obviously, when I did start to lose interest, it wasn't the same path of trajectory that you did. I do feel like the strongest scene in the movie is the opening scene, and that between Georgie and Pennywise, like Skarsgård's portrayal he never had that much to do after that point in the movie. So I felt like he peaked early. And then I did really like the dialogue and the characters and stuff like that. What I was a little bit confused about, to your point, is like, okay, so he comes at you and he's like, blah! And then what? The scene ends, but what happens? You know what I mean? Why does he keep letting these kids go away? I don't understand it.
Yeah, I just had a hard time. And Skarsgård, for me, I don't know, it was like this like demonic Scooby-Doo voice thing that he did, or like a demonic Yoda thing that the whole time he did it, I really thought like he, for me, tanked a big chunk of that movie for me. Like his portrayal more than anything. I just didn't like the angle he took with the character. I didn't really get it. It was like Joker and Yoda had a baby, and it was this weird abomination of a voice. I don't know, but I just like, it wasn't one of those movies. Like, I threw it on my worst of the year list because honestly, I think it's more interesting to put stuff that's a little more controversial. But it was a movie that, more than anything, I think I was just let down. Especially, I didn't see it until months later when everybody was telling me it was a 10 out of 10 film.
Yeah, for sure. That'll fucking ruin a movie quicker than anything, is expectations. And when people overhype movies, I just am like, this is inevitably going to let me down. And a lot of times it does. And on the flip side of that, a lot of times there will be the movie that you hear is super awful to the time you see it, and you're like, yeah, that wasn't so bad. So here's a couple of my 2017s. Split. Did you see M. Night Shyamalan's Split?
Yeah, another one I was lukewarm. I liked it, didn't love it or hate it. I kind of was like right in the center. 7, maybe like.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think McAvoy's performance is the shining beacon in this movie, and he's a versatile dude and somebody that didn't come up for Oscar consideration.
He is brilliant in it. Even as someone who didn't necessarily love the movie, had he won Best Actor for that, I wouldn't have argued. Like, he was so brilliant. And in seeing him switch back and forth between the characters in a couple of scenes, and his whole demeanor change and his face change, he literally looked like a different actor for a few seconds. It really blew me away, his performance. Like, that to me is a 10 out of 10 performance in a movie that I didn't necessarily enjoy as much.
So are you a Tommy Wiseau fan? Did you see The Room, and then did you see The Disaster Artist?
So I've never seen either of these. I have seen like clips of it, and it was one of those things a lot of my friends had told me about for years. I really wanted to see The Disaster Artist. I was actually kind of excited about it, but I just never got around to it. It was my crazy time of year and kind of missed out on it. I'll pick it up probably on DVD sometime.
Yeah, I think it was the funniest movie that I saw this year. And the litmus test is that my wife, Victoria, she doesn't always love comedies, and she was like tears running down her face through the movie. So that was great. And I had shown her The Room, earlier that week, and I just asking her earlier, like, do you think that you need the context to go in and enjoy the Disaster Artist? And she was very much like, no, but she also said it probably enhances your experience to know the inside jokes and shit like that. So that one was really, really good. James Franco is fantastic in it. But you know, the entire The Room is available on YouTube. So if you guys want to check it out, it is there. For
Another thing, I don't know if you saw it, but Yo Schmo Yo Ho, the people who do Songify the News,
no,
they do a very funny auto-tune song where it's all clips from The Room, and it's pretty brilliant. So definitely, that's something I would definitely check out if you like The Room.
link me up to that shit. I will forget, but that sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I will definitely shoot you that on Twitter.
For sure. Let's see. The Last Jedi, before we switch gears, what did you think about The Last Jedi?
So my super controversial opinion is that it's another Star Wars movie. I know people were very mad about this one because I didn't love it or hate it. It was another one. So my thing that I've always said with Star Wars, and people get mad about this, I don't think there's really any tens in Star Wars. I don't really think there's any ones. They're all in these like nice, fun adventure films that I think we tend to remember as more serious films than they actually are. And to me, this was shot so much like a Star Wars film. Like Rian Johnson did such a beautiful job of capturing like the cinematography and the actual feel. It almost felt a little dated in certain ways, which I kind of got was the point. But I didn't understand the harsh hatred for it that it got. Like it kind of blew me away. Yeah, it has slapstick moments, but like watch Return of the Jedi, tell me there aren't a lot of kiddie parts in that movie.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what you said, other than like, I did grow up with Star Wars. You and I had talked a little bit about nostalgia before we started recording, and that's a whole nother podcast that we will talk to you guys about another time. But basically, I'm hooked on it. You know, I grew up. Let's see, Return came out in '86. I was born in '82. My older brother is like 10 years older than me, so they were literally some of the first toys that I played with. That said, of course, we remember it through rose-colored glasses. It's a simpler time. We're children. We don't have responsibilities and shit yet. So you're not a jaded old man like I am now when you go in and see these movies. So we remember the exceptional parts about them, and we omit the the very average parts about them. And I agree 100% that none of them have been 10 so far. But there's something about the way that Kennedy is handling these new characters, and the way that they're kind of just infusing the whole thing with a little bit of moral ambiguity, for better or worse. And I think that's what turned a lot of people off to the Last Jedi in particular, was, without getting into spoilers, was Luke Skywalker and a lot of the things that happened with him. And these Star Wars obsessed fans that have written their own fan fiction, they go in there and they're like, this isn't the movie that I wanted to see. Well, you're not a fucking screenwriter. You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. So I grew up with Star Wars probably like everybody else. I've probably seen the original trilogy literally hundreds of times. My brother was like one of those guys who read every single Star Wars book. I played every video game. So I have that. And it's weird. As time's gone on, I've actually it seems like I've actually kind of fallen a little bit more out of love with Star Wars. I still like it. I mean, I definitely don't have any problems, but I think that's what people do is they create a movie that they want to see. And for me, the best part about Last Jedi was actually where they took Luke's character. I thought it was a little more brave and a little more different. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. In fact, I liked Force Awakens better because I thought J.J. Abrams did a good movie based on our memory of what those films are. I thought Rian Johnson did a good movie based on what those films actually are. But I thought the screenwriting in this was the screenplay was a little more ambiguous, a little more risk-taking than the Force Awakens. Force Awakens was pretty formulaic, even though I ended up liking it more because of the direction.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it. I actually like that. I haven't thought about it in that way. I think Rian Johnson's game was subversion pretty much the whole time. It's like, if you have expectations, he's going to start veering off to the left, and then he's going to make a hard right. And you're like, well, that's the opposite of what I was thinking was going to happen. And I also think that playing with the comfort of the diehard fans is what caused this backlash. Because if you look at the critic score on any of these sites, it's it's
Yeah.
relatively high. I think that who people who casually go to movies, they want what they're familiar with. People who have to go to movies, or people like myself and you who go and see every movie, it's like, show me something new, show me something different. And I do feel like, while you're right, this is very classically a Star Wars movie, especially in visual aesthetic. It tried to differentiate itself, and it tried to be, I guess, an edgier version of what Star Wars was before. And I love hearing people, you know, talking about Kurosawa and the samurai influence and all the shit that was not really in previous Star Wars movies, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing how that's finally come up because I've always said, and not that I said it, George Lucas said it, that Hidden Fortress was, A New Hope was pretty much a remake of Hidden Fortress.
Sure.
And it's nice that actually that is pretty much in the lexicon right now. And you're actually hearing people bringing that up more and more and more, which I think, Kurosawa is one of the greats. So it's nice. Anytime his name gets brought up, I'm there for that part of the conversation. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you're seeing more of that coming up.
Have you ever heard of, I'm about to take this in a whole different direction, subversion. Have you ever heard of Takashi Miike?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen Takashi Miike with like Dead Alive and Audition's actually the one I like. That's my favorite one, and that was his attempt at a normal, quote unquote, normal
Wow.
horror film. Yeah, Dead or Alive's a little too much.
I don't guess I've seen Dead Alive, but I thought 13 Assassins was really good. Ichi the Killer, I'm very on the fence about, just because it's a little too much for me. Kind of what you were saying. But the dude's directed over 100 fucking movies. How do you even do that?
Like he did one about yokai. It's like a kids movie. It's still a weird Takashi Miike film. Like you watch it and you're like, no, this is definitely a weird movie, and it's his version of a kids movie, but it's bizarre and it's weird. That guy just pumps out movies. I hate probably like 60% of them, but but you're jumping out so many movies. Like he's an interesting guy. I like that he exists. At least he's trying stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I always think of Steven Spielberg as like the prolific director. Like, few people have had their names on as many movies. And then when I looked at the IMDb page, I was like, holy crap, that is something else. So what are some of the movies that you're looking forward to this coming up year?
So there's a couple of them. There's Annihilation. I actually really, really want to see because I loved Ex Machina. I thought that was like one of the best films that the year it came out. I'm really excited to see kind of where they take that. I never read the book, but I've heard it's actually pretty good. And then I'm really excited for A Quiet Place. I think that looks like a different sort of horror film.
I'm not familiar.
And so A Quiet Place, it's starring, I cannot think of his name. The guy from The Office played Jim, and it's a horror film. You don't really know what's hunting them, but they track you based on noise. So the trailer's showing them like pouring sand as they walk so they can walk on it, playing games with like cloth toys and all this, and it looks like a post-apocalyptic, like fallen humanity living in the woods sort of movie. Looks really different. It's probably my most excited movie for 2018.
I love the fact that you didn't bring up like the only ones that I could think of, because they are sad. But when you said Annihilation, Ex Machina was maybe my favorite movie that came out that year. I'm a lover of hard sci-fi, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into Ridley Scott. But yeah, absolutely. Such a clever premise. It reminded me almost of an extended episode of Black Mirror, and it featured Domhnall Gleeson and Oscar Isaac, both gentlemen who ended up in Star Wars, with these reboots. So
and Oscar Isaac, man, he is just amazing.
He really is. He really is. There was that one like music movie that he did. He was in Brooklyn. It was like directed by the Coen brothers, I think.
I didn't see that one.
It was really good. I'll message you or shoot you a link on Twitter. Man, I wish I could think of it right now. But anyway, so yeah, I think Annihilation looks fantastic. And then I've never heard of the other one, but you almost sold me. What it reminds me of is if It Comes at Night was the movie that people thought it might be.
Which it kind of reminded me of It Comes at Night, which It Comes at Night is one of my favorite movies of 2017. I absolutely loved it. So the trailer very much reminded me of that. It has that type of vibe.
Yeah.
But it looks a little more in the horror direction and less in like the thriller, drama, character film. It looks a little bit more in the horror.
like so that fans won't be completely feel like they got sold something else, because there was a lot of backlash among the audiences with that one. Well, talk about divisive movies. People hated that movie that went thinking they were going to get a run-of-the-mill horror film, because it's anything but that. I kind of compare it to The Witch, which came out before, the Joel Eggers movie that you kind of thought would be a horror movie, and then you get into it, and it's very much more cerebral, very much more psychological.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. It's very much like that type of thing where, like, I think audiences just, I think had they marketed it different, I actually think the film probably would have done better. I think people just reacted poorly because of what they were sold was not the movie they got.
Yeah, absolutely. So I brought up Black Panther's coming out and Avengers Infinity War. You heard of those?
So Black Panther is like the only MCU movie to get me excited since like the first like 4 movies.
Right.
Well, actually since Guardians, since the first Guardians. It looks a little more serious, as weird, and that's as a lifelong comic book fan. I read comics every couple of days. I would like to see MCU go a little more adult, less family. They're not going to. This movie looks like a step in that direction. I don't know how much it'll be. I'll be honest, I probably won't even go see it. I'll probably just bypass it, because I kind of feel like people know what they're going to expect when I review an MCU movie. I'm probably not going to like it. I mean, some surprise. I didn't think I'd like Guardians 1, and that's one of the best comic book movies ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm a little bit more receptive to the blockbusters, and I do appreciate the fact that it does take these big-ass tentpole movies to kind of help produce and get the smaller films out and seen. But obviously, I think Jason Blum is a marketing fucking genius. That guy has never made a movie that lost money, you know? So I don't understand why people play such high stakes games, but yes, absolutely. Black Panther looks fantastic. I typically hate it when Assassin's Creed played Kanye. There's a lot of times when trailers play pop music or like modern current music, and I'm like, it just doesn't fit, but it very much does fit in the context of this modern story and that takes place in Wakanda and stuff like that. It's timely because it's supposed to be, where something like Assassin's Creed's a period piece. How are you going to throw a song like that in there, you know?
That Black Panther trailer is one of the best trailers of the year. In fact, in my Thor review, I said the first 25 minutes of the movie was the best. I was like, I mean the trailers, because Black Panther looked good, because I was blown away by that trailer. The trailer looks amazing, so I might check it out. I don't know. I'm kind of in such a weird place with the MCU right now, to where I'm like, and also that's me being a little bit of a fanboy. I'll be fully honest. I grew up reading all of this stuff religiously. I was more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, and I always liked, even in the comics, the darker, serious, more grounded stuff. Mm-hmm. And they definitely went for that Jack Kirby, lighthearted 70s and 60s, early 80s era of Marvel.
And it seems like they are gradually pushing more and more into that time period. And like Winter Soldier, I thought was really good as far as going in the other direction, something that's a little more contemporary, you know?
I would definitely agree. I'd say Winter Soldier is one of the best MCU films. Like I would definitely say it was one of those ones, like, I never personally cared for Chris Evans as Captain America until I saw that movie, and he was the Captain America I wanted him always to be.
Yeah, I always hated Captain America as a character, because he's like Boy Scout, like Superman, just like no flaws. And then to see him hold on
to Boy Scout
ideals, and then the way that the world changes around him is badass, you know?
Yeah, I thought that was probably one of the best MCU, and I just like that direction. And I was actually really excited after that film, because I thought Marvel was maybe stepping in that direction, but it seemed like they kind of stepped back more the other direction after Guardians, which, like I said, Guardians 1 is one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. I just don't need everything to be Guardians right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you feel like Thor Ragnarok kind of stepped into that wheelhouse too much?
I always said it felt like a bootleg Guardians. Like, it was like everything that I like, Guardians minus everything I liked about Guardians, if that makes sense.
Yeah, oh yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Like,
yeah, I haven't seen a Marvel movie that I outright didn't like. An MCU proper. There's plenty of Marvel movies out there I don't like, but I haven't seen a MCU proper movie that I didn't like. I'm very kind of morbidly curious about Avengers Infinity War because nothing like this has ever happened. I understand we said the same thing about Avengers, but like there are 68 primary characters in this movie. Spider-Man's been brought into the foil. The Guardians are going to be there. It's insane. Is there any way that they're going to be able to make this movie work?
I personally don't think so. I don't think you're gonna get, well, not for a person like me who likes like slower, more character driven, more exploratory films. There's just not enough time in that movie. This is gonna be, I think more these Avenger films are better viewed as series finales. Like if you watch them as season finales, they make a lot more sense. If you've gotten the entire story previously, because I'm one of those people who's been pretty hard on all the Avenger films, even including the first one that everyone loved, because there isn't a lot of character development. Now I get it because they don't have the time. And this, if they pull it off, though, is going to be a masterpiece, masterclass in filmmaking, because I don't understand how you have this many characters and manage to make any sort of coherent movie.
And yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And funny to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about earlier is like the expectations that fans have. Let's just say your favorite character is Thor, and you take 68 characters, you multiply that by 2, and you're getting close to the runtime of the movie. So let's say each of these characters were to get 2 minutes of screen time. If you're a diehard Captain America fan, if you're a diehard Hulk fan, regardless of who you love, are you going to feel like you got shortchanged? And that's kind of my biggest question mark about it. But I like what you said about series finales, because you do get your character development mostly in the first movie, whether it's Iron Man or Thor. That's where we get introduced to the character, obviously, through the origin story. And then they start to be able to pull back on that stuff in favor of more action. And I think my least favorite part about 9 out of 10 movies is the last act. I could care less about the worldwide destruction and all that shit.
I agree. That ruins. I probably trash more movies for the third act than anything else. Now, a successful third act can really pull you out of a bad movie. I've had movies I've hated for 2/3 of the movie, and then it ends. Goodnight Mommy was that one. I didn't enjoy Goodnight Mommy until the ending, and then it blew me away because the third act was so strong. And so I'm much more forgiving on 2 bad acts as long as they're up front than literally the last 20 minutes of the movie being bad. You leave with that negative feeling.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how they're going to pull this off. I'm curious to see. There is this like morbid curiosity in me that's about Infinity War.
Goodnight Mommy is fucked up. If you guys hadn't seen that one, it's like a German horror psychological thriller movie.
It's such a I love that. That was like one of my favorite horror films. It's weird, it's bizarre, it's slow. It also makes sense why I liked It Comes at Night. It's like that type of vein of movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So my absolute favorite movie from 2017 is Blade Runner 2049. It may be, I might need to sit on it a little bit longer, but I think it's probably one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. And it has a lot to do with Denis Villeneuve and the way that he directed, or Denis Villeneuve and the way that he directed the film. It has a lot to do with the cinematography, like you had addressed, the set design, the costume design. It just feels like a fever dream of every good science fiction thing that I remembered from growing up. Very like late 70s, early 80s era. And the sound design in it was impeccable and unlike any audio experience I've ever had in a theater. And I thought it was brilliant. And I think one of the biggest strengths that this movie had is that it was Denis Villeneuve directing it as opposed to Ridley Scott, which brings us to today's topic. Ridley Scott is one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. It's pretty hard to deny that Blade Runner and Alien were 2 of the most influential works of science fiction of all time. He's certainly done a lot more good than just those 2 movies. Thelma and Louise. I mean, there's a long list of good movies that he has done, but lately it just seems like each movie that he puts out is a little bit less good than the one before. Did you see Alien Covenant?
I did. I was so disappointed. I was one of those people who actually liked Prometheus a lot. I actually thought it was like a different take. It was another one I think audiences didn't get what they wanted. And I felt like Alien Covenant, he tried to combine Prometheus and rush it up to be an alien film. And what we got was this like hybrid that neither parts worked. And like, I mean, even yeah, honestly, I've been saying now that Denis Villeneuve is he out Ridley Scott's Ridley Scott. Like even with his Blade Runner, I actually think is superior to the original Blade Runner. I think it's a stronger film.
Mm-hmm.
And Ridley Scott, man, I don't know. He's a man that I respect so much, but I just think he's kind of just past his prime, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. He seems like a dick too. Like everything he says is so it just seems defensive. It just reads like I'll do what I want. I'm fucking Ridley Scott. And you know, to an extent, maybe he is entitled that. But then you watch Gods of Egypt and you're like, no, no, not Gods of Egypt. What was the one? Exodus?
Oh, I never even saw it, but yeah, it looked horrible.
It was so
No,
bad.
I heard his comments on Blade Runner where he was like, "Oh, it's too long," and this. I'm like, Ridley Scott, maybe go back and watch your own fucking movie.
Yeah,
Like that's
right.
the longest, slowest, slow paced movie ever. It makes the new Blade Runner look like an action movie, and that movie's slow.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
I'm like,
There is a
I
lot.
couldn't get over his.
We keep doing. There is a lot of epic action in Blade Runner 2049 that is not in the original, but it's like you got to get through 40 minutes of stuff in between each of those set pieces. So yeah, Alien Covenant. Back to that, I agree with you. Like you almost hit it right on the head for me. I'm not an Alien apologist. Like I don't give a fuck about that franchise. What I love is Alien and Aliens. Those unabashedly some of my top favorite movies. But just because there's xenomorphs in it doesn't make it quality. We saw AVP Requiem, and then like you said, Prometheus was a step in a different direction. It was him more exploring theological themes or existential kind of themes about where did life begin, what are our origins, and all of these. And you're right, people just wanted to see a fucking xenomorph in it. So really, Scott's like, all right, you guys like xenomorphs. I'm going to give you I don't know, what was it, a protomorph and a
Yeah,
neomorph, which aren't xenomorphs, but they look really similar. And I think for the most part, general audiences and at least fans of the franchise were pretty cool with it because it gave them that familiar element. But are you going to see the third one?
I probably will. I've seen all the movies, even including the horrible Joss Whedon one, the Alien
Oh
Resurrection
wow,
movie. I saw that in theaters, so you can't get worse than that. And I just feel like I'll see it, but I felt like to me, like Alien, specifically Alien, is one of my favorite films. Aliens, I loved. I actually loved that one more as a kid, and then as I've got older, I appreciate Alien more. It's a little more my type of movie.
mm-hmm.
But I definitely will see it just to see where it's going to end up. I don't know. I just would like to see that franchise taken away from him. Honestly, give it to someone else. I know Neil Blomkamp was working on one for a while. Please give him that franchise. I think he would treat it with so much more care and respect. I think he would do a much better, more true to Alien thing. I really wish we would have got to see what a Prometheus trilogy would have looked like. But we got that reactionary film, and we'll never be able to see what Ridley Scott's real vision was because Alien Covenant was not his real vision. It's so obvious that's not what he wanted.
Well, and I almost, because Lindelof was attached to Prometheus, I feel like they probably did have a very tight, streamlined one story to tell. And what Damon Lindelof does is he like comes in and pulls pieces out of your puzzle to where you're like, I don't even know what this shit is anymore, because he loves questions, but I don't think he has any real answers for you. Similar to the J.J. Abrams complaints. But yeah, I don't know. I am back to that term, morbidly curious. Like I wanted to see the follow through with Prometheus, and then like you said, it undid a lot of. I mean, literally, David came to the planet and undid everything about the engineers within like 5 minutes of the movie. And Michael Fassbender is easily the most compelling part of the Prometheus and the Alien Covenant, but
Oh, by far, Michael Fassbender is just such a good person. Like I love most of his movies. Granted, I didn't see that one of the Snowman this year, which I heard was pretty bad, but most of his stuff's really, really good. And he is by far the best thing that come out of that. And I just feel like, yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions. Now, I'm super into ambiguity. I love movies that kind of leave it up in the air, but you can lean a little bit too much in that direction to where it doesn't make sense. I felt like Prometheus made perfect sense. and I felt like there were going to be answers. Now I'm not so sure we're ever actually going to get answers. I kind of think we may never get those.
Yeah, yeah. I kind of like similar to what he did with Blade Runner. Ridley Scott has come out and said that he plans on doing a sequel to both Alien or Prometheus or whatever you want to call that trilogy, and then he wants to do a third Blade Runner movie. And dude's already getting pretty long in the tooth, like you had said. It's like he not only is he past his prime, he's his physical abilities are going to start to, degrade at this point. He's got to be 80 or something. You know what I mean?
So does Ridley Scott want to do the next Blade Runner then?
I can't speak to that. That's a good question. I didn't specifically hear that he does, but he has a story idea in mind. Of course he's going to produce it. But if he can give some really talented screenwriter the basic outline, the skeleton or the frame of it, and be like, you add the flesh to this, you add the heart to this, and give it your own personal touch. But if there is another Blade Runner movie, I want to see Denis Villeneuve do it,
Yeah, if they bring back Denis Villeneuve, please, yeah, I will sign up. I will go buy 2 tickets. That's easily probably my favorite film in like a decade. I was blown away. It's one of the best sci-fi movies of all time. I would easily put it in the upper echelon.
He is actually 80 years old on the dot. Yeah, so he's been around for quite some time. The production process of a typical movie, just in case you listeners and watchers aren't aware, is right about 3 years between the post-production or, pre-production, writing scripts. Sometimes they push them through much quicker than that. I think maybe a 2-year process. So if he did those movies back to back, he would be 85 years old, when he's done with it, which I guess older directors have made stuff before, but I just don't know.
George Miller did Fury Road, and what was he, like 76? How old was George Miller? Like 76 or something like that. Right. And he made the most visceral action movie I've ever seen. That being said, I think George Miller has gotten better with age, and I think Ridley Scott's kind of gotten worse with age.
Yeah, absolutely. Like opposite of a fine wine. That's what Ridley Scott is.
Yeah.
He again, I shouldn't take away from the fact that he is a very talented filmmaker. He's made movies that I couldn't dream of being able to do them that good. So no disrespect to him. It's just like at some point you got to let it go. If Ridley Scott was like, I want to do a new science fiction masterpiece, I'd be like, fuck yeah, dude. Good luck with that. But if you're like, I just want to keep kicking this dead dog over here, it's like, just stop.
It's kind of like when people say with sports, like you don't play sports until you kind of exit when you're a little bit more on top. You don't play the game until you can't play anymore, and then you're getting sacked all the time. And I kind of feel like he's in that thing where he just doesn't want to give it up. And unfortunately, I feel like he's damaging his reputation because he is one of the greatest film creators of all time. That's like, I think Alien is arguably one of the best horror films and one of the best sci-fi films ever made. Blade Runner is arguably one of the best sci-fi movies ever made. He's so influential, and I feel like he's hurting his own reputation so much, kind of like George Lucas did toward the end, where he hurt his reputation so much by not giving it up.
It's a really good parallel. It's amazing how fans can so quickly turn on people that we, really look up to. Maybe it does go back to our conversation about expectations. Maybe at the end of the day, that's where a lot of this comes from, because if Ridley Scott would have never made Alien, we wouldn't be holding him to Alien standard when he puts out Alien Covenant. But now it's like, dude, we know you can do better. You've done better before. So yeah, if you could put an ending on this Prometheus trilogy, how would you wrap it up? What would you like to see?
Well, now it would be really hard because I feel like they kind of screwed it all up. Like you said, they totally undid the whole Titans and all that right in the first few minutes by just killing everybody, to where I don't even really know how I would end it at this point. I feel like Alien Covenant kind of did end it in a weird way, but I feel like you're gonna honestly have to do some half-ass movie that just ties them in together. Unfortunately, I would like to see it go back to its roots more and be a little bit more of a horror film, a little bit slower film, and a much smaller third act. I feel like the third act of Alien Covenant was a little ridiculous, a little superhero movie, a little blockbuster.
Yeah, so bad. At this point, all we have to root for is an antagonist. And that makes it really hard. You can't structure a trilogy around the bad guy. I mean, it's unconventional. Maybe you can, but he's an android, so he's not really going to have a dramatic arc. I mean, he is what he is through and through. He's always been very conniving and sneaky and shit like that. We do know that he somehow found these magical little face huggers, which, if face huggers come out of eggs and they turn into aliens, where do these little baby face huggers come from? How does that even make sense? It's a whole different conversation. Point is, he had like 1,000 or 2,000 people asleep on that ship, and he's going to start genetically altering all of them. So what about if the ship ended up crash landing onto something similar to LV-426, and they brought in the colonial marines and made it more of an aliens action film? Would that be a way to at least kind of try to bring it back to what the original Alien series was about?
It's not personally what I would want to see, but I honestly think commercially that's probably their smartest bet, is to make it a more action film, because I notice a lot of film buffs love the first Alien better, but I notice a lot of casual moviegoers prefer Aliens way more, and that's because it is a little more accessible. It's a little more digestible of a film. It's a little more action film. I think to kind of be a happy medium of being a blockbuster, they need to put some action back into it. Probably, I got to be real. The movie that I want to make is not going to make you money. It's going to be like Blade Runner. Great film, didn't make any money, and that's what they can't really do that again. I feel like that what they probably need to do is unfortunately probably do it a little more action film, and get some, like you said, get some Marines in, get some Space Marines in, and maybe that would help it out a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's not so much the film that I want, but at this point we've kind of been like, I don't know, hell, at the end of Prometheus, we thought that David and Shaw were going to go visit this planet together, and things didn't work out quite that way. So we did get a real bait and switch. They could introduce us to totally new characters that end up showing up on this planet wherever those people were experimented on, which would be really fucking similar to what happened in Covenant. So I don't know, Ridley, if you're interested in getting somebody to pitch the ideas to you, me and Caleb say stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll write it. I'll write the screenplay, man. I'll do it.
No promises that it's going to be good or that my spelling will be correct.
No, it'll get done. I promise it'll be as good as Alien Covenant. That's what I can promise.
So, what about Blade Runner? What about where we're left with Kay at the end of Blade Runner? Where do you go from there?
So I do feel like, I don't know if I want to do too much and spoil anything, but like I do feel like we do need to see a progression of the not androids, the replicants, of seeing where they're going as far as fighting for their own freedom. And I do feel like that's the next thing. I actually think that Harrison Ford is kind of not necessary. I don't, that I feel like there's a lot of different areas that we can take this. In fact, kind of like the last one, where I just kind of want to see another character, because it kind of seems like that's where we've been going. Is the first one was one character, the second one is another character. Give me a new character in the third one. If you can do it as masterfully as you did 2049, I actually really want to see. In fact, there is a character, without spoiling it, I'm sure you know who I talked to, who I think would be a perfect female protagonist for the next one.
Absolutely. Yeah. Way to dodge the giving shit away, because I don't want to spoil it for you guys either. It would be interesting as if something that was kind of touched on in 2049, if there was like a resistance, in the next film, like a replicant uprising, if you will, something like that. The world feels so lived in and so rich and so detailed that you don't need the same characters to carry you through. You just need that premise. So I turn this over to you. I submit this to you, Caleb. What about if Alien, Prometheus 3, and Blade Runner 3 were the same thing?
No, do not do that to me. I would be so mad. Give me a comic book with that, like a graphic novel, a crossover. I mean, they put Batman and Predator in a thing. I'm sure they could do that in a comic. But no, I would be so mad if they did that. But Ridley Scott, it wouldn't shock me if that was all ended up being a prequel to Alien.
Yeah, he's kind of alluded to it over the years that they are. I can't think of the name of the corporation in in Blade Runner right now. I unfortunately I can't, but then I know it's Weyland Yutani in the Alien.
Yeah, that's I knew the Weyland Yutani, but I can't think of the name of the other one.
So he's kind of said that these androids and replicants kind of may come off the same assembly line kind of stuff, to which I got to ask why it is that androids bleed jizz and replicants actually just bleed like regular people.
That's the new future ones. It's farther in the future where they're jizz powered. That's what that is.
Man, I'll have like a whole army of them then. Have you heard anything about the God particle?
No, I haven't.
Are you?
Is it like a movie?
It is a movie. It is the sequel to Cloverfield and 10 Cloverfield Lane, or it exists inside the Cloverfield universe.
Well, sign me up. I like the Cloverfield universe. I even like the first one when everybody seemed to hate it. I actually think it's probably the best found footage movie, personally, for me, that exists. I feel like it tried to put more of a plot in there with cutting back and forth between the old tape and the new tape to where you actually get some character development in a found footage movie, which I felt really interesting. So I hadn't heard about that. Yeah. I didn't even know they were coming out with another one, but sign me up and I would definitely be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked 10 Cloverfield Lane. Again, to kind of tie it back around to what we were talking about earlier, I feel like it really suffers from a third act reveal that's like, just fucking leave it out of the movie. We didn't need all that. It was so strong, and the tension was so good, and then it just, woo! But I guess that's what makes it a Cloverfield movie, right?
Yeah, the third act, sometimes the reveal, especially like horror films and all those, can ruin your movie. I don't know if you saw Gerald's Game.
Yes, I did.
The last 15 minutes of that movie, I loved it up until then. And then where she goes, confronts and everything after, and it's that last like 10 minutes of the movie, if you cut that out and just left it a little more ambiguous, that movie jumps up a couple points instantly. I feel like I get why they do it. I think sometimes it's for audiences, because audiences like to have a pretty little bow on everything and know exactly what happened. And sometimes I feel like it just ruins so many good movies by trying to do that, where just leave it ambiguous. Let your mind play. Plus, then if you want to do a sequel, it leaves you more open.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. Gerald's Game, another really strong chamber piece, character study that it had all of the dramatic tension and all of the character development that it needed. And then the thing just felt tacked on at the end. But I do think it goes to like general audiences want to see something happen. And when you are left with these chamber pieces, they might walk out like, that was boring. They spent the whole movie in one room. And you're like, that's the fucking point,
That's what made that whole movie brilliant. Like those two actors being in one room for the whole movie made the movie. And then when they try to do something bigger, but I do think a lot of general audiences, going back to Blade Runner, one of the complaints I'd heard is that the third act, the final quote unquote fight, is so slow and boring. I'm like, that's what's brilliant about it. They didn't go the normal route. One of my problems with Logan, I love Logan. Logan was a wonderful movie, but that it was like a more character driven modern Western. And then all of a sudden the last fight was a comic book fight. But I know why they did it. It was general audiences. They needed it. And had that fight been smaller, that movie would have been amazing. I mean, it still was amazing, but it even would have been better to me.
I think it is great. It definitely ranks up there as one of my favorite comic book movies of all time, but I had major problems with it. The reveal of X-24. I was like, haven't we seen this shit in Terminator movies and all sorts of stuff? And then the kids at the end and that whole, like, it really does in the last 15 minutes turn into a very conventional X-Men movie, but it actually has stakes. So that's something that makes it more valuable than other comic book movies,
Yeah, Logan is one of the greatest comic book movies ever. It's definitely my favorite. I know it's not MCU, but Marvel in general film. Definitely my favorite X-Men film. It was such a slow movie. It was so deliberate. And then that last one, I get why they did it, but that final fight for me, I remember in the theater, really bothered me. It bothered me less on future viewings. I got over the burn, but still, I mean, it's still, even with that minor hiccup, it is still one of the best movies ever. They could have shrunk the budget though, and it would have been even a better movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting topic that we will save for another time. Thank you guys for stopping by to check out this week's episode. I say this week, I've done like 3 this week. Thank you for stopping by to check out this episode. Whoever's in here viewing this right now, I see you. I just don't know who you are. Thank you for stopping by to check it out. And Caleb, it's been fun, man.
Yeah, man. Anytime you want to talk movies, I'm always there. I love talking about movies. So
I'll post your information down in the description, but is there anything you want to leave these people with?
No, you can just follow me on Twitter. It's probably the best place to keep says stuff. I'm actually relaunching my website, calebsaysstuff.com. I used to actually got into this doing written reviews, and then kind of transitioned into YouTube. So I'm actually starting to put more of my YouTube stuff on there and kind of putting the written stuff a little more shoved into the back. So either there or on Twitter at Caleb Says Stuff is the best place to find me.
Fantastic. And again, yeah, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for hanging out, Caleb. And we will have to get up and do this again soon.
Yeah, take it easy, man.
Yep, you too.